Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 120. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. Dave, officially 1 day away from the 2024 NFL Draft. All the speculation and guesswork, you could say, and all the just analysis of it all before the draft can finally be put to bed tomorrow night. As the first round of the NFL Draft gets kicked off. We'll have rounds 2 and 3 on Friday, rounds 4 through 7 on Saturday. Of course, we are going to bring every angle of the draft and the actual selections to you guys throughout the weekend. So, Dave, it is, as they like to say, our Christmas this time of year.
Hallelujah, and hallelujah for mock draft season. Even though you turn around after the draft and they start the 2025 ones, at least you get a small break from mock drafts. Listen, I love everything about the process, the pre-draft studying to get to know the prospects and learning, and the tape breakdowns and the analytic deep dives, and I mean everything that goes along with it. I enjoy that. I just despise mock drafts.
Why is that?
It is the most losing proposition ever. And you know why people probably love them is because of the fact that A, they're probably not doing them, and B, it is the easiest thing to chime in on and say you're wrong, and know that you're 100% right in telling somebody that they're going to be they're not going to be completely right. Does that make sense? Because how many perfect mock drafts for an entire team have you ever seen? It's a unicorn that everybody tries to hunt for that never can be captured in that sense. But I like every bit of the process. It's just and maybe it's because I've done this thing so long, but I just absolutely despise putting together a mock draft now. I like talking about them, and projecting. Okay, will the team be interested in this guy? Could this guy go here? But actually putting one of those that will be my hell. When I die, and if I end up going down the other way, I'll be forced to sit there and put together Steelers mock drafts 24/7 there. That's probably where it relates to. No, but
that seems a little over the top. No,
I don't know. And here's the thing. I hate them so much. I hate doing them, but I agonize over doing it yearly. I mean, I put in way too much effort in it, as probably shown in this one's here.
How long did it take you to make your one and only mock last night?
A day and a half, easily. A day and a half. Yeah, and there were like 6 versions of it, and take this player out and put that player in, and no, that's not going to work. And yeah, I spend way too much time on such an exercise that I know I'm going to fail at.
Right. And the internet, as you said, they love nothing more than to tell you that you're wrong or will be wrong.
Right. I mean, there is no win, even if you get 1 or 2 of the picks. And look, it was probably one of my better mock drafts in years last year.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, you still miss on 80% of it, even if you get a couple of picks. I mean, I had a couple of picks right, just in the wrong spot and all like that, kind of thing there. But anyway, the people love them. That's why we do them. That's why we talk about them. We've got our final ones to talk about today that I think each of them are going to have a little bit of discussion to go along with them, and some splaining to do, right?
As the kids like to say, using the new age language, I'm splaining to do the Ricky Ricardo there. Yeah, Dave and I, our final mock drafts. We'll discuss those in just a little bit. Let's start though with some of the big kind of draft news, speculation on top of speculation. You can call it and take all these things with grains of salt, of course. But Tony Pauline dropped a massive piece of news yesterday afternoon on a potential trade up for Pittsburgh. And his reporting indicates the Steelers are in trade talks with the Denver Broncos, who currently sit at number 12, Pittsburgh at number 20, to trade up. And he thinks the Steelers would be targeting Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell. Pauline also mentions the Eagles are in a similar boat, picking at number 22, looking to trade up for Mitchell, potentially with Denver. Denver looking to trade back. They don't currently have a second round pick, with eyes on quarterback Bo Nix. Again, speculation, reporting, it's lying season, all those types of things, but that is the report. It's important to acknowledge that. Obviously, if they did make that kind of move, Pittsburgh did, it break a lot of precedent based on a lack of pre-draft interest in Quinyon Mitchell. But Dave, what's your interpretation and feeling of this report?
I mean, I'll be surprised if it happens, but Pauline hasn't been bad at some of this stuff in the past. I mean, it could this team definitely use a player like Quinyon Mitchell? Absolutely. I mean, but within that, I mean, the cost to do that and how messy it potentially makes the rest of your draft at that point to go up and get a player like that, and with all the other needs, I'd be very surprised if it happened.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it either. Obviously, it's probably a safe bet to assume that it won't happen than banking on and predicting any sort of trade. You had to go from 20 to 12. I mean, Pittsburgh went up actually with Denver 20 to 10 for Devin Bush. That required a second round pick and a next year's third. Probably require at least that second round pick, especially if there's maybe a potential bidding war with Philadelphia or some other teams trying to jump in. And I mean, Mitchell, I think they like him. He'd be a good fit. Him and Porter on the outside would be a lot of fun to watch for the next 5+ years. But no, not at his pro day. And granted, I don't believe Mitchell worked out at his pro day. There probably wasn't much to see, but he could have still gone and gotten to know Quinyon Mitchell, and no pre-draft visit for him either, which is also very notable and would, again, break that precedent. I just have a hard time believing that Pittsburgh would draft any first round pick where they did not attend his pro day, Tomlin and Khan, or at least brought him into the building for a pre-draft visit to have a real good get-to-know-you session.
Look, he'd look great in black and gold. I don't see how you get there,
Sure, but that is the report, and we'll see what happens. But I thought that obviously is the biggest kind of news, you can call it, quote-unquote news, speculation coming into the last second. But, Pauline, he's one of my favorite insiders when it comes to the draft. He was the first on to Deontay Johnson trade rumblings, which ultimately proved to be true about 2 weeks later. So he's gotten things wrong. He's gotten things right. But I do generally trust what he has to say. And so I think it's worth passing along.
All right. And, maybe there are some calls being made. I don't know. Go ahead and pass while we're passing along news. Pass along what Jeremy Fowler had to say of ESPN this morning.
Yeah, talking about wide receiver Courtland Sutton. We've talked about the receiver market in Pittsburgh potentially in the mix for Brandon Aiyuk. Should he be traded? And we think if a trade does happen, it most likely occur either before the draft or during the draft, so the Niners can get back picks now and replenish Aiyuk. But when it comes to Courtland Sutton, who's been some trade rumblings as well in Denver, the Broncos kind of retooling things. They trade Jerry Jeudy earlier in the offseason. Fowler calling Pittsburgh a team to watch if Courtland Sutton is traded. Fowler notes the Broncos currently have no intentions to do so, but of course you would expect their posture to be, we're not trading him until he is traded. That's how these things typically go. So another name in the mix along with Aiyuk is going to be Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about that is obviously Courtland Sutton has a relationship with Russell Wilson. It would be a decent wide receiver to add to that room with experience. And obviously, if you did it right ahead of the draft starting, it would allow you to, it would open up your draft board. You'd still probably take a wide receiver at some point during the draft, but it would open you up to different areas to do so at that point there. Now, here's the thing. The report aside, the compensation aside, even, let's assume that all that minutia can be worked out and taken care of. And assuming that Denver does not eat any of that 2024 base salary as part of the deal, he would still arrive in Pittsburgh with a cap number of a little more than $13.5 million overall. And, obviously you're probably not going to trade for Cortland Sutton unless you immediately, I think he's got a 2025 year still on the contract there. So, I mean, you could, either you're going to work out an extension with him right away because he probably wants more money too. Who doesn't, right? There. So, now obviously probably not looking for the kind of money that that Brandon Aiyuk is looking for. But it still feels like he's a guy that if you trade him for him, he's going to be clamoring for a new deal. So you'd have to work that out after the fact. And oh yeah, the Steelers have less than $13 million in free salary cap space right now. A little 12.005998 million to be exact, as we sit here right today. So there would be a little bit of, You'd have to do something probably just to accommodate that, even after the top 51 roster displacement happens there. So, I mean, it's worth noting that maybe the Steelers could be potentially, interested in a guy like him. But just like with Aiyuk, the contract thing is the hardest part here. As we sit here right now, Alex, and I know there's been a lot of reports, and we had to respect the smoke coming out of where it's coming out of. I'll still be surprised if this team trades for a wide receiver between now and the end of the draft. It's not impossible, and once again, you can make it work if you want to make it work bad enough. I just think I'll be surprised if it happens here.
Yeah, I don't know where I come in. I certainly leave that door open. I think they want a more established guy on the outside. I think they're in this win now mode. I think they want somebody that's big and physical and has yak ability. And I think Aiyuk and Sutton check those boxes. The cost on Sutton obviously would be less compared to Aiyuk from a contract standpoint. Not to spend too much time on this, but what do you think? And I know obviously the structures and guarantees are big sticking points, but just big picture, what's the average yearly value on a long-term deal for Cortland Sutton?
Well, the way his new money average is right now, it's $15 million. So go up from there.
Well, how much up though? We talking under 20?
I think you're looking 19 or 20 is probably what he's angling for.
Okay. Compared to Aiyuk, where we're talking 23
25
plus
to 30,
25.
probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did Michael Silver, put? Look, he's going to want to get in that. Aiyuk wants in that $25 million or better club.
Mm-hmm. But then, would Sutton be more agreeable to not having the second year guaranteed than Aiyuk? That could be a factor as well. From a draft capital standpoint, pick 98. What do you think it would take to get Sutton?
Yeah, I'm not giving no first or second.
No, of course not. I think Aiyuk could probably be a 2. I think Sutton, we're talking. They gave Jerry Jeudy away. I still don't quite understand why they did that deal for Cleveland. They got almost nothing back in return, some day 3 picks. I think Sutton is still held up in higher regard than that. So, if you could get a 4th for him, that'd be incredible. Some of these receivers have gone, even Deontay Johnson, for not a ton of, return on the trade. But I'm guessing I'd say pick 98 would be what it would take from a deal standpoint.
Yeah, probably. You're right there. Then once again, you'd probably want to talk to Denver ahead of time and find out what the contract demands are and all like that with Sutton ahead of time. It just, sure. These trade and sign deals are messy,
And you throw an NFL draft on top of all that too, with all the other moving pieces and a good draft class and how that impacts everything as well. So I'm along for the ride. We'll see what happens. We'll get our answers soon enough. And that's all I'm really looking forward to right now. On the Aiyuk front, not to belabor that too much, John Lynch and the Niners again reiterating that they intend to keep Aiyuk in San Francisco for his career. They're in contract talks right now. It was a little interesting. Lynch was asked, do you anticipate Aiyuk being on your roster through the draft? And Lynch said, I anticipate that, but that's not necessarily an ironclad guarantee that he will be on this roster throughout the NFL draft. So all it takes is one call. You referenced the Michael Silver report. Niners are asking for a first-round pick. Is that true? Who knows? They're right to ask and ask big, and maybe they'll take less than that if a trade, comes down to it. Maybe a 2, but that's where things stand right now.
The old, we have no intentions of trading the player until we trade the player.
Right. Until the second we change our mind.
In your gut, you think Aiyuk gets traded before the draft concludes to anybody, not, anybody.
I do not have a great gut feeling on this. I think, again, the easy and the quote unquote safe answer is to say, no, he won't. So I will take that and say, no, he won't. But again, I'm just a passenger along for the ride when it comes to these receiver fronts, because I just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. My gut just tells me no, but I mean, obviously with all these reports out there, nobody would be surprised if it happened.
Sure. There's enough smoke at this point. And you wonder if there's going to be some fire that some embers that come up, but we'll see. And we'll address that whenever the time comes. What else do we have here, Dave? I want to save our mock drafts and kind of the last big thing we talk about, hit on some of the smaller things up front. Ben Roethlisberger was on, I think, DVE this morning. Not a ton of information there. He does agree, though, that offensive line is the priority for Pittsburgh, and he would start with center over offensive tackle, saying that, you need a center. The tackles, you can give them more help. There's more ways to kind of scheme around, less talent at tackle. And he mentioned, of course, his strong relationship with Marquise Pouncey, himself a first-round pick, and how important that was for him. So Ben is in the center camp when it comes to Pittsburgh's draft.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with him, right? It's really hard to argue. Today is the 20-year anniversary of Ben Roethlisberger being drafted by the Steelers in the first round. Where do you remember where you were when that happened?
Trying to think back, I was 11 years old, so I was not exactly writing the scouting reports I am today. I think I was just in my room watching it. I mean, that was obviously the 2004 draft, which was crazy because the focus was so much on Eli Manning, his refusal to play, and the trade, and with Phillip Rivers, and just everything that came along with that. So talk about just chaotic drafts. That's still probably one of the most chaotic drafts we've had in the last 50 years or so, just because you've not really had storylines like that exist since.
I remember we had just built a big house back in Florida and just moved in. And as part of I had an oversized office, really 2 rooms that we had chose to in building to have combined into one. And at the time, because I'm a messy Marvin, so to speak, my wife thought, what would be a good idea is not put carpet in there and just have the regular, like a painted, treated concrete floor in there, which ended up being a bad idea. We ended up putting carpet on after the fact, but that was the initial. That was the way the house was when we initially moved in there, and I just rushed in. We had just moved in. I got a makeshift, got the cable set up right away, and had a TV over in the corner. I remember watching it, sitting in that brand new office of mine after just moving in there. So and was obviously thrilled, with the pick at the time, but I definitely remember where I was when that happened.
Yeah, and I know Ben kind of reflected on that a little bit too. He called himself the original Aaron Rodgers in the green room. I still don't think that, he didn't fall the way that I think he's kind of making it out to be.
Ben wouldn't oversell anything like that. No, I've never thought of that as an Aaron Rodgers type fall. Maybe in his mind,
sure.
They all think they should be the first quarterback taken.
Right, and that competitive spirit obviously proved useful in his NFL career. I think he also said he might end the podcast, the footballing podcast. I hadn't listened to the comment specifically, but I think one of our guys mentioned that.
Look, I think he's had some great interviews over. I don't drink anymore, so I could do without all the beer talk and all like that. But I understand the angle that they take and all like in that though. But I mean, I think there's been some very good episodes in that podcast, and it is good to hear his thoughts on games and certain plays and quarterback decisions and all like that. So I'll if they do end it, I'll have mixed feelings on that. I think once again, I think some of the interviews have been great that he's had on there.
Yeah, he's had some big time names, Mike Tomlin, Bill Cowher, a bunch of players, did one with Pouncey, with Debo. So yeah, and the production value is very strong. I mean, from an audio visual standpoint, but whatever he wants to do, we'll obviously roll with.
Now, look, if I still drank, I'd be all over, him going through all those beers and all like that. But that means nothing to me at this point.
All right, Dave, you wanted to talk about some center discussion. You want to do that before our mocks or after our mocks? I'm not entirely sure what angle and direction you wanted us to go with center.
It's up to you. I mean, it's about one of the centers here, and it's more, is it a feature or is it a bug, type talk here.
All right, let's do this. Let's dive into our mocks. I know people actually, they obviously well read. People have been waiting for your, your first and last version of your mock drafts, and we'll kind of go through that. Maybe, intertwine some center talk as well. But let's go through our first round picks here. We both go center in the first round, but not the same center. I went Graham Barton from Duke, who I'll convert from left tackle back to center where he played as a freshman. And Dave, this one, I mean, if you hit this one, man, call your shot. I love it. Zach Frazier from West Virginia at number 20, you say.
I think I have a little bit more explaining than you do because, I mean, is Barton would you consider Barton the odds-on favorite right now, just globally between fans, media, draft nicks, all like that? Would you consider him the odds-on favorite?
Yes, from an odds standpoint, if you were, doing the betting markets, not to say that he's guaranteed, he's certainly not, but I think Barton would be the top name on that list. And
then globally too, I think most people would have Zach Frazier number 3 in the big 3 centers, correct?
From the Steelers standpoint of anyone they could take.
I'm just talking. I'm talking outside analysts. I'm talking just the draft nicks, the fans, the media. I'm not talking about teams, but the perception is that it's probably interchangeable between maybe Graham Barton and Jackson Powers Johnson, but most everybody you'd probably poll would say Zach Frazier is number 3, correct?
I think generally, but I think in terms of the top 3 most likely picks from a betting odds standpoint, Frazier is not in that top 3. He'd be, I think, an outlier, would be my guess of it.
All right, let's start with a conversation of why we both chose center in the first round here. First and foremost, I think we both agree it's a glaring hole on the roster. We are more thirsty about that position than Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan tried to sell us the other day. And as I mentioned in a previous show, just recently, there's just one quote for if Omar Khan did indeed slip up and give us one nugget, perhaps during the pre-draft process, it was right around the combine time in the interview with WPXI, where he said, where he was asked about the center position and the importance of it. And he said, there's a standard here. I got spoiled. I was around Marquise Pouncey and Jeff Hardings. That was my time here. Obviously, DeMonte Dawson. There were plenty of great centers here. There is a high standard. So we owe it to ourselves to look at everything to try to find the next great Steelers center. That has been tattooed in my mind since the moment he said it. And then you combine that with just an obvious look at the roster and perceived holes right now. All that combined led me to the center position as the first round pick.
Certainly, it's not difficult to make the case for why it should be a center, just broadly speaking, in the positional aspect, the need there. My standpoint on Barton, was based partially off the quote that you mentioned from Omar Khan. And I know he's mentioned Nate Herbig. I just can't see them really truly believing that Herbig, having a high level of confidence that Herbig is their guy. To me, that's almost a little smokescreeny from Omar Khan. If I keep saying, oh yeah, we like Herbig, maybe people will believe us and, just kind of throw that out there to throw people off the trail a little bit. But certainly I think when you talk about center, the need there, the history that Pittsburgh has, you appreciate the history from Pouncey to Dawson to Webster, Mansfield, etc. I think Pittsburgh will be in line with that when it comes to center and finding that next really talented center.
All right. Now, obviously, I do these with the idea of what I think the Steelers will do, and with Graham Barton and your mock being the first, being the choice there, you have less explaining to do than I do. So let me try to tell you where my head is on all this. I've already explained why I think center will be the pick. Why Frazier and not Graham Barton or Jackson Powers Johnson. And as I explained in my summary here, I do believe that one of those three very well could wind up being the pick. I'm not discounting that at all. When it comes to Barton, I'm not scared of Barton overall. It's just there's more projection involved, which makes it harder. He might, as I've said several times, I think he might make a great guard in the NFL in addition to possibly being a great center. I went back and looked at some of his 2020 tape at center. It did not knock my socks off, but I'm not dinging him hard for that because he was just 18 at the time and just a freshman. So just merely looking at two TV tape games in 2020, I can't sit here and unequivocally say that he won't be a great center in the NFL. It's just, to me, it's a tough projection for him. His athletic testing is just, it's one for the books. When's the next time we're going to see a guy 6'5", weighing what he weighs, put up, the RAS score on that? I've struggled. And look, I've never been ashamed about saying where I struggle, where I have problems projecting things. And I just think I have an internal struggle of projecting him on a move from tackle to center. Now you could say, all right, well, you said he's going to be you think he could be a good guard. To me, is a little less projection going to from tackle to guard than tackle to center. And yes, I realize he played 400 something snaps at center there, but to me, it's just a little bit more projection involved. And I feel it's a little bit tougher there. All that said, I do agree that he could quite possibly wind up being the pick. It would not surprise me. As far as Powers Johnson goes, and this gets into the feature or bug discussion and all like that. Don't get, here's the thing. I wonder if his weight is a feature or a bug. Now, don't get me wrong. As I state, he moves fantastically well for a player listed at 328 pounds. Really, really fantastic. Even so, Alex, in the deep dives that I've done, and I like taking things out of the box and looking at them from every different angle possible, and sometimes too much. He'd be the heaviest center drafted in some time, even at 328 pounds.
Heaviest in the first round, or heaviest?
Just heaviest. Heaviest. Okay. The heaviest center drafted in some time. Look it up. And just go back to that post that I did where it goes all the way back to, what did I go back, 2016, and listed all the centers and as part of what teams might jump the Steelers and all like that. I've got a full table in there somewhere that lists the heights and weights and all like that. 328 pounds is heavy for a center. All right. Now, is that a feature or a bug? Now, even, on top of that, people probably forget that he reportedly weighed in at the Senior Bowl at 334 pounds. When that came across initially, I thought maybe there was a typo in there or something like that. And look, I am the king of typos, so who am I to embarrass Jim Nagy on Twitter and question, is that a typo? But it is stuck. 334 pounds at the Senior Bowl. Now, there are reportedly, and I use that loosely, reportedly some injury concerns when it connected to Jackson Powers Johnson, notably some concussion stuff. I will tell you this: I tried to search that out on Google and all like that, and I'm not doubting that it's there. It's just the injury concerns with him are not easily traceable down. And on top of that, he seemed to make it through the 2023 season just fine. overall. I think it's just a note in there. I don't think it can be used as a narrative, so to speak. At least in my searches, might there be some concerns with concussions overall with some teams? I can't say for sure, but that is a report running around out there. Can't it gets into the discussion here. Is his weight a feature or a bug? Can he carry that weight in the NFL, even at 328 pounds? And if he's asked to play at a lighter weight, can he be just as effective? I don't have the answer to is it a feature or a bug, but I think it's worth discussing.
Yeah, it is fair. What I come in on Powers Johnson is that I think he's athletic out in space in a line. I think on tape, though, my issue with him was some of the second level type stuff and being able to hit a moving target and be able to change directions. I think out in screens, he was an asset. I think he's got good foot speed overall. His numbers were explosive. You look at his vertical, those types of things. He can get out of his stance. He can pull. I don't think those are issues, but I think hitting a moving target and being able to kind of adjust his weight and kind of change direction subtly on the fly, he was falling off and not being able to connect and stick and drive. And in Arthur Smith's more wide zone system, that will be varied. It's not going to be exclusively wide zone. We kind of litigated that after the hire months ago, but I think that's the issue there with Powers Johnson. So, I think if they do take us, if you told me, Dave, they took a center in the first round, I think it's going to be either Barton or Frazier. I know Frazier's sticking out your neck a bit more than Barton and other selections, probably even more so than Powers Johnson. But I think that is more realistic than them taking Powers Johnson.
All right, going deeper. Look, once again, I just it's one of those things that I like to look for. I like to look for discrepancies. I like to look for outliers and what's behind those outliers, and if there's anything we can read into them. And his weight just ended up being one of those outliers that I just think is worth noting. Does this mean that Powers Johnson can't wind up being a 10-year all-pro center in the NFL? Absolutely not. So it's just one of those things as part of this process of deciding which guy I was going to put in here at 20 overall that I went through there. Now, back to Zach Frazier. I tried to channel the hearts and smarts and the experience and all like that. And look, not that Barton and Powers Johnson don't have hearts and smarts. I just think Frazier's hearts and smarts outweighs both of theirs. Sure, he's coming off the broken leg last season, but according to him, at the combine, there was no ligament damage, yada yada. You remember at the combine, there was a requested to get those extended medicals done that he talked about there when he finally came out and met the media. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers were the team that made him go get those extra medicals, or at least one of a few teams there. Frazier obviously has that impressive wrestling background we've talked a lot about. Was a 3-time captain at West Virginia. And don't forget, Blaine Stewart, who obviously was a former member of the Steelers coaching staff, is now on the West Virginia coaching staff. The Steelers had no problem finding out who Zach Frazier is and is not during this pre-draft process there. I realized that, who was it? Isaac Williams went to that pro day. And he was
the Big 12.
The Big 12 pro day. And I think he was the only one, I think, from the Steelers, maybe there, at least notable one from the Steelers there. Frazier obviously did what he was able to do during the Senior Bowl and was there for all of that. Really impressed a lot of people by getting out there and doing anything, I think, overall. He obviously gave it a go at his pro day as well. On top of it, you look at some of the interviews with this kid. You look and look, the experience alone. I mean, this kid's got over 2,000 snaps at center. He is the most experienced center, I believe, in this draft class here. I know the size. I know the overall length is not ideal when it comes to him, but look, draftniks, including myself, had the same concerns about Tyler Linderbaum a few years ago. And no, I'm not thinking that Zach Frazier's Tyler Linderbaum, but I think he has everything needed to be a good center. And I think even early on in the process, you said, Zach Frazier, you're a Steeler because of the kind of center that you believed at the time that Arthur Smith even looks for. So is this a guy that could potentially fall down into the second round and the Steelers maybe get at 51 overall? I'm not discounting that at all. Do I see why people have Zach Frazier as a second round graded guy? Yes, I do see that. If you bypass center in the first round, if you're the Steelers, can you guarantee that he falls to 51? In a perfect world, what a fantastic outcome that would be if that happened. I don't believe I'll believe it when I see it. I don't think it's impossible, but I'll believe it when I see it. And if you don't take a center in the first round, you have to trade up to go get a guy like Frazier in the second round. It just becomes messy and all like that. The end of the matter here is I think the Steelers really, really like him. And if you really, really like a player and you like the hearts and smarts type, and you like the experience, why not just go get him at 20? That's where I came in on this overall. That's my whole reasoning behind all this. Is it a bit of a stretch? Absolutely it is, because once again, this is a perceived third overall center in this year's draft class. This is a kid that many think have a second round grade on him. And there you go.
There you go. No, I think it's a really detailed explanation. I mentioned before that many times that I think Frazier does feel like a Steeler. Feels like, Arthur Smith kind of a guy. My NFL comp to him when I wrote the scouting report on Frazier was Ben Jones. And Arthur Smith talked up Ben Jones a lot. They're going to love his toughness, his throwback attitude, his low maintenance, just that he can be a leader by actions a bit more than words, but somebody that can anchor that middle. So when it came down to Barton versus Frazier, you went Frazier. Was that just because of the experience factor? Were there any other factors leading you to Frazier over Barton?
The hearts and smarts, just thinking they really like him.
Yeah, I think Barton has the hearts and smarts too, though. He's obviously Duke, and so I think he's got the smarts, and you see the aggression in which he plays with, and I think just kind of that all-out attitude he has. I think he's got the hearts too. What I went with Barton, and which obviously is the more conventional pick, quote unquote, the safer, easier pick to justify. But I think they're looking for that next Marquise Pouncey type, and Barton's kind of that oversized center, of course, a college tackle. He comes in at 6'5", 313. Pouncey was 6'4.5", over 300 pounds. Really good athletes. Barton tested better than Pouncey did, but you just watch him on tape out in space, pulling, getting out to the second level, climbing the linebackers. You see similarities there. I go back to what Arthur Smith said in that big book of Arthur Smith I did after he was hired. This is what Smith had said in a coaching clinic after he took the Atlanta job. He's looking for certain things in his linemen. He wants guys to be heavier, thicker, physical run blockers. He values hip flexibility, bend and speed off the ball. All of those things, I think, are boxes that Grant Barton easily is able to check. Smith once talked about his ideal body type for an offensive lineman. He mentioned Roger Saffold, who was 6'4.5", 316. Again, similar size and just look overall compared to Graham Barton. And you hear Mike Tomlin during a press conference on Monday talk about how do you evaluate conversion types, guys that go from tackle to guard or guard to center, or even in this case, tackle to center. How do you get comfortable in projecting that guy to a new position? And Tomlin talked about, are you smart enough to do it? Do you have a good football IQ to learn a new spot? And do you have a sort of a background at that position? Maybe you can lean on from past experiences. And Barton was playing center, as we've talked about, his freshman year at Duke. So I don't think he was tipping his hand about Barton specifically there, but I think that certainly meets the things Pittsburgh would look for to feel good about Barton playing inside and doing so potentially and likely out of the gate.
Look, we know Arthur Smith was at that Duke Pro Day, but we also know, too, Barton didn't do anything during the Senior Bowl, right? It didn't even go, right?
Right. It was a shoulder injury. I went back and checked Dane Brugler's draft guide. There were reports about lower body, but I think it was a left shoulder issue that he had.
All right. And he also didn't do anything at the combine, right? Not even on the field drills, right?
Yeah, I don't believe so. He was still recovering from the injury.
All right, so with him not doing anything at the Senior Bowl, not doing anything at the Combine, and only are I wonder why, why couldn't have, and we'll never know. Is Arthur Smith being at that pro day enough? Have they, and look, I think I look back, Pat Meyer was out in Washington on that, on that pro day there. But I mean, if you really thought that guy, if you had him in your sights to be your first round pick, yeah, it feels like, man, couldn't either Tomlin or Khan been there,
they weren't at Frazier's workout. It doesn't appear
right, but I think that once again it rolls back to how much do I think they knew about. I think they knew already all they needed to know about Frazier way ahead of the Combine, other than getting those extra medicals done because of his being a WVU product, because of Blaine Stewart, because of the association, the closeness of that school and all like that. I feel they knew a lot more, and plus Frazier has the tape at center.
Sure, he does. Let me ask you this as well. Now, when I did my what they look for study, to be fully transparent, Zach Frazier hit in every category except for height, and he missed height by 3/8 of an inch. So he essentially, to me, checked every box. But when was the last time Pittsburgh used a first-round pick on somebody who would have as low of an RAS number as Zach Frazier?
Sure. And look, here, the only way I can explain that away, and even if he was 100% healthy come to pro day, was Zach Frazier going to have an off the chart RAS? Probably not.
Right. Might have been better. Wouldn't have been the 9+ that Pittsburgh typically has been looking for.
Look, without a doubt, Barton, once again, like we said earlier there, it's going to be a long time since we see somebody 6'5", put up an RAS, especially compared to the center position like Barton did. And everybody has all the in other words, there's no reason to discount people picking him as the pick at center, without a doubt. Once again, this is more of a gut feel thing for me.
The other factor for me, and it's again, we're splitting hairs here, is the age. I mean, again, typically what Pittsburgh looks for in round one, younger, really athletic, even if there's a bit of development needed in their game. Bud Dupree, Broderick Jones last year, Barton's 21, maxed out RAS number, checking the box with the pro day or with the pre-draft visit coming into Pittsburgh's facility. It hits. It doesn't hit the pro day Blues Clues, Tomlin Khan, at that pro day. But besides that, it hits to me everything else.
Yeah, look, once again, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, boy, how can all of you be picking Barton? I'm not. I mean, it's logical that it's likely to be one of the three. Once again, this is a gut thing with me.
Okay.
It's the whole hearts and smarts experience. Everything and look, I mean, if we're being realistic here, a guy like Frazier, all three of these centers have been tightly grouped together in some of what are deemed the more credible draft nicks, right? Daniel Jeremiah, Dane Brugler, you name it. These guys have been consistently together right there in the top 40. So, is it a reach because Frazier is the third of the three in most of those, and technically outside of the top 32? Yeah, technically it would be, and several people might characterize it as a reach, but maybe not so under Khan yet. But the Steelers have been known to go after people that they like, albeit damn the rankings, so to speak. Once again, this is a gut feel for me, with them really liking the player and the experience that he brings with him. And once again, I just have struggled with the transition aspect of Barton versus what you see is what you get with Frazier.
I get that. And if Frazier is the pick, it's a classic. He was our guy type of pick, 100%. Because I totally could see them being like, that's our guy.
All right, you did put now in the other players listed, which we just had in there to kind of let people know where our minds are at and all like that. You did put Zach Frazier in your others considered. So did you indeed give it serious consideration at all, or is it lip service?
No, I really did, because that kind of feels like the oddball. I put Mims, Fuaga. I put in Terry and Arnold too if he drops. That was kind of the pre-Quinyon Mitchell news, which again, you take that with a grain of salt. But again, it goes back to what I just said. I could see them being like, that is our guy. That's the type of center that we want, and we don't care about what rankings say. That's our dude. We're getting our dude. Like, that would be where that pick comes in from.
Okay. I like the odds of one of us being right and one of us being wrong. Now, obviously, if Jackson Powers Johnson is the pick, we're both wrong.
Or none of the three, which is possible.
Right. And look, as the four additional that I considered there, it was obviously Barton, Jackson Powers Johnson, or the four others that I considered in there. And obviously the default kind of being Marius Mims.
And you put A.D. Mitchell from Texas.
Oh, A.D. Mitchell. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you had Mims and A.D. Mitchell. Any reason for the A.D. Mitchell inclusion?
Just because of, if something were to break a certain way like that, and maybe they don't have Frazier as a first round guy. Maybe Barton comes off. Maybe they're not overly impressed with Power. And if Mims was off the board, if it broke a certain way, and obviously Zach Frazier was at that pro day, so you could connect the dots that way on top of everything. It was more of if things went off the rails in the wrong way, could I theoretically see that as the pick?
When it comes to tackle, if I told you, Dave, they took a tackle in round one, do you think it's clearly Mims if it is that guy? Do you think anybody else could truly push for that spot?
I mean, other than the Penn State kid falling, Fashanu.
Not Fontenot, Fuaga, Guyton.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it can't happen.
Sure.
It just, it feels like it would be Mims. It just feels like it would be Mims if they went that route to me.
He's been a leader, no question, and certainly could be for all the reasons we've talked about. I've cooled on that a bit, and one reason why I did go Barton over Mims in particular, because those were kind of among the final two, I guess I could say. I think Fuaga, to me, I thought about that some more and thought if he could slip a bit, I could see that. But Mims, two issues, two thoughts there. When Ike Taylor, who works in that building, don't know exactly what his title, it's never been officially announced, but some sort of scouting capacity in that building, talked about the O-line on his latest podcast. He talked about how raw Mims was. We can debate if that's accurate or not. I don't think his game is incredibly unrefined, but we know the lack of experience is probably where Taylor's angling that from. So it wasn't a super glowing report of Mims in that aspect. Talked about the upside and the potential, but kind of kept mentioning this dude is super, super raw. Other thing too, and no one really talked about this much, when Mims had his individual workout earlier this month, I think April 10th, along with Brock Bowers, Mims declined to weigh in, which was really interesting. And I remember what happened to Dawan Jones last year. He didn't want to weigh in, get on the scale on his pro day, and we heard some reports Pittsburgh was not happy with that. Now Mims weighed in, at the combine, and his weight didn't seem bad. He carries his weight, it seems to be very well, but I thought that was curious to see Mims not get on the scale for his individual pro day.
Do you think Mims is a day one starter?
I mean, I get the hesitation and
in the right
situation.
I guess he could be, right? I mean, depending on the what is he up against? On a team that drafts him. I think there's chances for that to happen wherever he lands, including Pittsburgh. Because we have said if this team drafts a tackle, regardless of where they draft a tackle, they have to allow that kid to at least compete.
I think that would be ideal for him. I think if he goes to a place where he almost has to be the starter, where you have nothing there, an immediate need, and you say, we need a right tackle, this guy has to be able to be the guy for us. I think you open yourself up to additional risk. I think you're in a situation where you can have at least a short-term plan, a quarter of the season, half a season, something where if it doesn't look good in camp, you have a different route you can take, even just for a little bit. That would be the ideal situation. I think teams talk about the Eagles just throwing out a team that has a Lane Johnson for a season where Mims can sit and learn and maybe become the guy in 25. That's probably ideal for him. But again, I also agree his game is not super unrefined too. It just, there's not a lot of snaps to be watched.
If they were to take a tackle at 20th overall, not named Mims and not named Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu, all right, those guys falling, you'd have to be worried what happened that they fell in the first place. But if not Mims, if not Fashanu, not Alt, man, I mean, Fuaga, I would think would be my next guy. Is he still on the board or not? That I would give the consideration to, I think. Do we both agree? Where do we both come in on Fontenot?
Again, I don't discount anything. They've shown so much interest in him. I think you just wonder the fit, where he's going to play. And there are some rumblings on some medical concerns with him too. Some long-term knee issues. Now, they took Darnell Washington last year, who had those concerns. It's why he reportedly fell, but that's third round. It's a little different situation compared to a first-round guy. We don't know the medical evaluation on him, obviously. But I'm kind of thinking for Waga as well. I think it's really, his athleticism, his speed off the ball, his physicality, his finish. The issue with me was the lack of length. Pat Meyer typically likes his tackles to be longer. You see Dan Moore, Broderick Jones, they're 34-plus inch arms. That's what he likes, a bit more size. But I think in terms you watch the tape and some of the sets and how active his feet are, I could see that being a name if you talk about a non-center.
All right. Look, we got to start moving this along, yeah. But I think you see or hopefully everybody at least sees where I'm coming from. You don't have to, obviously you don't have to like these, but at least understand the reasoning behind the picks, why we're mocking these guys here. True or false? The pick at 20, assuming they stand pat, will be one of Amarius Mims, Graham Barton, Jackson Powers Johnson, or Zach Frazier.
Take out Powers Johnson, throw in Fuaga, and I'll say true.
Okay. All right.
That's where I'm at. I could be wrong, certainly, but I don't think it's going to be Powers Johnson. I don't think he's the ideal fit. I think some of the buzz is he's going to drop later in my, whatever it's worth, my full 7-round mock draft I did this morning, all picks 1 through 257. I had Powers Johnson going at 49 overall.
What do you think about my feature or bug discussion on the weight? On the weight.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a little similar. Remember Landon Dickerson a couple of years ago? He was a big guy too. He played some guard, but he kind of, was center vibes with him as well. Again, the weights, it's a component of it, but to me, where I just get tripped up is just some of the tape. And maybe that's related to his weight and his size, trying to redirect and shift and change directions. Again, not a bad athlete. He's athletic. He can get out of the stance. He can pull. He can get out in space on screens. But just some of that more nuanced type second level work, I think he struggles with. And to me, that makes him a less ideal fit for this system. I watch Graham Barton. I watch him change directions and redirect on combo blocks. Like it's just so natural and fluid. And I don't see that with Powers Johnson.
Would you still be on board if that ended up being the pick?
I mean, I get it. And I understand, he's gritty. He's tough. Again, he can move, he can pull. And those are things that Pouncey did. So I'm not necessarily against it. It just would surprise me a bit based on, I think, the base run scheme they're going to run under Arthur Smith.
Okay. All right.
I really agonized about tackle and center. And once I finally landed on Barton, I thought, okay, I'm good. I don't have to agonize as much. I knew I was going to put receiver in the second round. And then I really agonized over which receiver to put in there. So Dave, in the second round at 51, we both went receiver, but different names. I went Ricky Pearsall from Florida. You went Roman Wilson from Michigan. Tell me why you went Wilson.
I wonder, and look, I've said it several times. I'm a huge Ricky Pearsall fan. This is another one where you could definitely see him being the pick there. I do kind of wonder if he will be there, but on top of that, you get into all the dot connecting and where Tomlin and Khan are in Michigan and Roman Wilson's connection, albeit reported. I met Mike Tomlin a few times before I even played college football. Just a great guy. Just a great dude. And you circle back to the interaction, whether or not it was show and a smoke screen at the Senior Bowl, him pitting, what was it, Roman Wilson against
Mitchell,
Quinion Mitchell, all like that. I think Roman Wilson, what he's done in college speaks for itself. I can really see him. And once again, we say that we can easily build out probably a list of 10 wide receivers maybe to go in this spot. I think Roman Wilson's on that list. I think Ricky Pearsall's on that list. I think there's numerous wide receivers. Xavier Legette, Malachi Corley. Once again, this is just, I think they like him. I think the chances of him being on the board are there. I think maybe Pearsall might be gone. Pearsall is a little bit older, but I don't think you can ding anybody really for age in this year draft class because of the whole COVID thing and all like that. It's just, once again, my gut tells me it'll be Wilson.
When I was preparing my mock draft and was initially starting it, I was convinced I was going to put Roman Wilson in the second round at 51 for basically all the reasons you mentioned. But here's my hang up with Wilson. Pittsburgh is primarily looking for an outside receiver opposite George Pickens, correct?
Sure, they could use one with versatility. Absolutely.
And Wilson is smaller, slighter, and predominantly played in the slot at Michigan. And I just struggle to see how that's exactly fitting and comporting with what Pittsburgh needs at wide receiver right now.
Now, he did play some outside.
Yeah, but I think
but he was
75% snaps roughly were probably in the slot.
He was predominantly more inside.
And Pearsall, to me, gives you a bit more inside-outside versatility, flexibility. And I think Pearsall's got a thinner frame. He's 6'1", 190. I was trying to find that.
I think Pearsall's a better route runner, too.
I think so. I think they're similar overall in terms of their smoothness, fluidity, top of the break. I think Pearsall a bit of an edge, but I think they're pretty similar guys, I think, in style overall. And I think the age is a concern. My biggest concern with Pearsall is he's about to be 24. In Pittsburgh, they draft young receivers. They draft guys at 21, 22 years old to develop them some more. And so that to me is a big concern of why Pearsall might not be the pick, along with potentially not being there, but a deep receiver class might push some of these guys down. I was trying to find that I think they want a big physical yak type of guy, but I could not find that name that fit in terms of, realistically being there and the team showing at least a moderate amount of interest. I wanted to go even a Keon Coleman or Jalen Polk from Washington, but I just didn't see the interest there to check that box. I think Legette's going to be gone by then. A.D. Mitchell will obviously be gone by then. So I just struggle with that. So I think they want somebody with a bit more size. I look at Mike Williams in free agency, but I just couldn't find that name. And Pearsall, I think, at least gives you a bit more size and outside experience than Roman Wilson.
Fair enough. Last year, slot, Roman Wilson, 364 snaps, 184 wide. 2022 for Roman Wilson was slot 262, wide 30. 2021, obviously several years ago, slot 134, wide 261.
Okay, did more a couple years ago, but I think the size will profile him a bit more inside. And when he's been, had they signed Mike Williams or not traded Deontay Johnson and needed that more slot type, I'm Roman Wilson all day long, 100%.
Okay.
But I think it'll be a receiver, barring any sort of trade up for a center. I think 51 is that spot where they're going to take a receiver.
Right. Once again, this more defaults to. And look, they're gonna be a lot of just two wide receivers on the field, we think, in this offense, right?
Sure. Yeah, there's not going to be as much 11 personnel. Probably more than what traditionally Arthur Smith has used, but not going to be as frequent as years past.
All right. So what does that do if you mainly consider Wilson more of a slot guy.
Right. That's why I could not ultimately put him into my mock, despite thinking initially he was a slam dunk for that. That's why I thought about Corley from Western Kentucky, yak type, but slot guy, rawness in his route running. I just couldn't get there.
The main thing that I got hung up with Corley is the average depth of target, average depth of receiver, more of a, not down the field guy, so to speak. He's fabulous after the catch. That's his calling card. Absolutely. But, is he a guy that you can push the ball down the field? We know what he can do within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and it's fantastic. Much like Kansas City with who's the Rice.
Rice.
Right. He was kind of that. Corley's just kind of a little bit bigger, obviously a bigger version of that. There were a lot of questions about Rice with average depth of target and how if he needed to be in the right offense to kind of utilize him to what his best skill sets are. To me, Corley's along those same lines.
Yeah, they had to manufacture so many touches for him, and rightfully so, because he was their best, the most talented guy at Western Kentucky. But in Pittsburgh, are they going to really be scheming up 7-8 plays for him to get the ball on smoke screens and flare outs and stuff in the backfield, jet plays? Probably not. And so it just became harder for me overall.
Look, once again, I've talked about Ricky Pearsall quite a bit during this free draft process on this show. It would not hurt my feelings at all if he's the pick. I could see him being the pick for sure.
All right, third round, and I think another debate to be had here with your third round pick. But if you're convincing me of one thing in this draft cycle, it might be that Mike Sanders still falls more than I think that he initially would. You have Sanders still the third round pick, the corner from Michigan at number 84. I went Blake Fisher, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame, getting my tackle here on the right side. I think, Dave, you made a really compelling case for why Sanders still is going to go later than people expect.
And look, if there's one name in this list of this mock that I get, he won't be there.
I'm sure you've already gotten it.
I'm afraid to look at the comments.
I haven't looked. I'm betting it's there.
But I even put in here, I can hear it now. Dave, Sanders still won't be there by the time this pick rolls around. I get it. Really, I do. Even so, and once again, I'm guilty of over analyzing a lot of things. I will never not be that guy. But when you look at his measurables, I think there is some reason to think he might slide. Now, will it be down, in deep, will it be through the first 83 picks? I will tell you this, and I've mentioned this, I think, on either the live stream or the round table and even with you once or twice here. Even looking back, even since at least 2017, that's the furthest I went back. And I think Ross McCorkle pulled maybe a little bit deeper stats than that, though. Not one cornerback has been selected in the first 83 picks of a draft who measured in under 5'10". Now, Sanders still measures in well under 5'10" at 5'9" and 3/8. Now, the pushback to that would be, yeah, sure, Dave, but how many cornerbacks under 5'10" even deserve to be drafted that early? And obviously all it takes is one team to love Sanders still. And trust me, there are a lot of teams that are going to be in love with Mike Sanders still, but maybe at certain price points, if you will. The fact that I'm even mocking a 5'9", 3/8 Sanders still to the Steelers should be a huge shock to people that followed me in the past, because I just generally stay away from those corners under 5'10". Look, this team has missed cornerback Mike Hilton, 5'8", 6'8", 178 pounds ever since he left Pittsburgh. I think there's no denying that, right? Mike Sanders still is the closest, I think, thing to him when it comes. His tape is fantastic. I mean, he is a guy that wherever he lands, and hopefully it's not the Ravens, the Bengals, or the Browns, that you really can't help but root for here. He is a feisty son of a gun at 5'9" and 3/8. I am banking on the historical aspect here of the position. And even I think Dane Brugler said some teams are just going to flat out probably pull him off the board because of his size there. And, I if he's there and he does drop to 84 overall, I think you run up to the podium and turn it in.
I agree. And I think you make a good point about the size, pushing him down. I think it's fair overall, but will be a great fit for Pittsburgh because they have not replaced Mike Hilton. I mean, they have with different people and combinations and committees. You're the rundown guy. You're the pass down guy. They tried a bunch of different things. Nothing has really worked out cleanly and nothing you've been as confident in as you were with Mike Hilton. Let me ask you this question. Is Mike Sanders still going to be the first nickel slot corner drafted in the 2024 NFL draft?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, there's a lot, I think there's a few of them that could maybe potentially, be that guy. I mean, is he really the truest and best slot in this class? Possibly. Yeah.
He's been, I think, considered that, but I asked that to say, if the answer to that is yes, he'll be the first slot. I have a tough time thinking the first slot won't be taken until 84, but is there a case that an Andrew Phillips, who people view as a day, not even a day two, but a round two guy, or a Max Melton could get drafted over him? Thinking about it more and listening to your case, I think that's valid. I think there's a chance that, conventional wisdom said, Sanders was the first slot. Potentially, I think Phillips or Melton could go before Sandersville. And if that's the case, then that will push Sandersville down.
That's what I'm banking on.
So we'll see where he falls. Because I know some people think he'll be a first round guy, but that might be a touch strong because the size and the history says the teams will have the reservation. So I think I don't know what's going to happen. I'd still be surprised if he fell that far. Maybe he falls to 60, something like that. But I think you make a really good case for it.
All right, that's where I come down on that.
For me and Fisher, I think pretty clean overall. Right tackle, he's young, 20, I think just turned 21. I didn't love his tape, but those developmental, things he'll need in this game. Came in for a visit, smart, and just somebody I think that can probably not start in 24, but I think the plan would be in 25. Jones goes over to left tackle. Fisher comes in at right tackle. He's got length. And so he's got some size, got some mass to seal on down blocks and push his weight around. And again, coming in for the visit, I think a pretty obvious choice here.
Look, don't think that I didn't have one version of this with trying to put him in there, but I really, the more I looked at it, the more where I think maybe guys like Max Melton and Andrew Phillips might go. And man, this team needs a slot corner,
They do.
And I just wonder if they bypass the slot position with one of those first three picks and into that second, fourth round pick. I kind of wonder what will be there, and then when you get into that second, third round pick, I do kind of wonder if the Notre Dame tackle will be there on the board still at that point. So that's part of the jigsaw puzzle problem that I had when putting this thing together. And yes, one version of this thing before it went in the trash can included Blake Fisher at number 84 overall. Look, the other players I considered there at this spot: Max Melton, Andrew Phillips, Mason Smith, Blake Fisher. Those are all guys that we've talked about in this process that, however this thing plays out, one of those four guys very well could be a member of the Steeler at one of these 2 third-round picks. But I do kind of wonder how much stock Andrew Phillips has gained through this thing. And man, there's not a lot not to like about Max Melton. That kid sounds raring to go on special teams on top of it, which is going to be another attractive thing with him. So I'm ashamed of myself for not getting a tackle put in these first 4 picks, but there were other areas that I really think this team needs to address as well too. And it resulted in me leaving Blake Fisher out of this. But I mean, if you look at tackles that fit, Blake Fisher's on the list. Now he's got some development to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I mentioned, I think he's not a day one starter. I can say that, I think, with a high degree of confidence. But he just turned 21, and so he was super young coming out playing as a freshman at Notre Dame. And so I think the goal will be to get him ready for 25.
Okay. And some people, what's going to be the pushback to that? Why draft a guy in the first 3 or 4 picks that you think is going to have to not play a lot his rookie season?
Sure, I get that. I mean, they've done it before, core 4, and then like kind of a similar arc whenever they took him in the 3rd round. But you one of the last tackles remaining, because you're not going to be able to wait too long on that. And so I think that the depth of tackle at the top will keep a couple of those guys in that 3rd round range, like a Fisher available. But as you said, you can't fill every position that you would like to. I don't have a slot corner here as much as I think it's a need, and I would love to see it and certainly could see it happen. But I go back to my fallback plan and their fallback plan of go bring back Patrick Peterson one day after the draft.
Sure, I see it. I understand it.
That
I mean, look,
my
if you look at all of our mock drafts, all of our contributors and all like that, and you circle back to the conversations we've had on this show, there's a lot of familiar names intertwined between all these. And then obviously in the players considered and all like that. Once again, the hardest thing to put in this thing together, man, if they had only gotten a center in free agency, if only they had gotten, another tackle body, that you could work with in this thing. Another somebody to hold the water at slot. It would have made this thing maybe a tad bit another wide receiver, know. It made this thing a little bit more pliable here, I think, and and because of that, it's kind of forced us, so to speak, to try to nail 4 or 5, really even 6 positions within the first 4 actual picks.
Yeah, again, the 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag problem. And so you got to make some choices and some sacrifices. And if Pittsburgh does not trade and move around the board, they'll have to do the same on draft day and draft weekend. All right. At number 98, round 3, we have alignment day. We have balance. You and I both taking Cedric Gray, the inside linebacker, at number 98.
Yeah, it's just the Aaron Curry thing with the activity that he had throughout the pro day circuit. It's just something that you can't ignore no matter how hard you try. And if you're going to get one that's worth maybe developing, maybe even seeing the field a little bit during his rookie season, obviously playing on special teams, it feels like this is a spot to do it in, whether it be a Curry, whether it be a Trevin Wallace, whether it be the Ohio State, what's his name?
Tommy Eichenberg.
Yeah, Eichenberg. It feels like this is a spot. If you subscribe to the smoke, they're being fired where there was smoke, where Curry was. And look, there's there's not a lot not to like about Gray. He was at some point during his North Carolina career team captain. He registered a whopping 369 total tackles during his college career, with 363 of those coming in just the last 3 seasons. He only had like 6 his first season there. He wasn't just a tackling machine. He had 8.5 sacks, 5 interceptions, 13 passes defense, 5 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries during his college career. And once again, all those stats came in his last 3 seasons. He should be able to contribute instantly on special teams as he works developing his overall game to try to see the field more than just a backup. Curry was at that North Carolina Pro Day, helped put him through the positional drills. If you're going to go a inside linebacker here in the middle of this draft, specifically in day 2 with one of these picks, he's got to be on that list.
Yeah, I'm not confident about a ton with my mock and trying to predict what Pittsburgh will do, but I'm pretty confident they will take an off-ball linebacker in that 3rd, 4th round, that 98, 119 range. Just all the smoke there. Aaron Curry at 3 pro days. I'm bringing in Kalike Hudson for a visit in free agency. He didn't sign, goes to the Saints, but they have a desire to get depth there. They want to protect themselves after all the injuries last year. Cole Holcomb's uncertainty, Landon Roberts last year, his contract, he's getting older too. I don't see it as necessarily a big need, but just based on the tea leaves, I think they will take somebody around this range. In Pittsburgh, when they rebuilt that room in 23 at inside linebacker, they wanted splash plays. We talked about in 22, they just weren't the splash plays. And Gray consistently created those high impact plays. So you can't take every single pick, I don't think, for a mock from a pre-draft visit list. And there's a pretty strong correlation, day two positional coaches, whether that's Joey Porter Jr., Grady Brown last year, Frisman Jackson, George Pickens 2 years ago, Alfredo Roberts, Pat Fryermuth in 21. List goes on. And so Curry being at that pro day, I think they'll go with Cedric Gray.
And look, they addressed the position in grand fashion in free agency with Patrick Queen. And yes, Landon Roberts did everything you want from him and more last season. You got a big question mark with Cole Holcomb right now. You got a big question mark with Mark Robinson right now. Is Patrick Queen going to play on special teams? No. Is Landon Roberts going to play on special teams? Not if he can help it.
Very little.
Is Cole Holcomb going to play on special teams? Man, you just want to see this guy make it come back. The short answer is probably not. Mark Robinson's not guaranteed to make this roster. You have a hole there, and really one would put some, hopefully with some potential future to play alongside Patrick Queen. Is enough of an argument. Look, if all Cedric Gray did was play 100 defensive snaps, but was a core special teamer, at least in his rookie season, that's enough.
And he played, I think 400 snaps on special teams in his Tar Heels career. And the dude literally has Troy Polamalu's 43 tattooed on his arm. So talking about just the fun story and Steelers connection, like that's your guy.
Right. I mean, it's hard not to connect the dots there, especially with Aaron. If Aaron Curry wasn't as active as he was on a pro day trail, it'd be easy to tamp this down some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big reason why I'm going inside linebacker, because you don't send your inside linebackers coach to 3 pro days without a serious desire to add somebody. All
right. Any other discussion there?
No, I think we're in alignment there. In round 4, I love your pick here, Dave. I love the double dip aspect. No, I honestly do. No. It's full sincerity. Luke McCaffrey, the receiver from Rice. I love the double dip aspect of it. The bloodlines. I could definitely see this happening.
Look, why did I go this way? Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins is one answer to that question. Second, the trading away of wide receiver Deontay Johnson. Third, this team did not draft a single wide receiver in 2023, a rarity for this team. Is it totally out of the question that this team double dips at the wide receiver position, barring none of this trade stuff around, Aiyuk, Sutton, any of that comes? Is it totally out of the question to think at some point during this draft, this team won't double dip at the wide receiver position? That's the first question.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy thought.
All right. What about this Steelers thing in bloodlines?
Man, they love it as much as any team in football. We don't have to go through the whole list of names about, whether that's Devin Bush, Cam Hayward, Terrell Edmonds, Herbig last year, Watt, obviously. Pittsburgh loves bloodlines as much as any team in football. As much good as there is about Luke McCaffrey, there is probably equal amount of pushback on him. He was just a 2-year wide receiver at Rice. He developed nicely, former quarterback, obviously has the bloodlines, does good in the contested catch area. That means a lot to the Steelers. Did enough with making plays down the field. He played inside and outside as well. At Rice, so that helps give you at least another option to play some outside, and another slot option overall as well too. Just a good kid overall. Now look, the blocking, that's got to be worked on there. Had he done the bench press, and there's a question here, would he have hit the benchmark of checking all the boxes? And if not, well, we got our reason why he did not do the bench press. Yeah. There, because he needs some strength. He's got the will to be a blocker. He's got the want to. He needs some development there. He also does not have a lot of special teams stuff on in his tape. That is going to be another pushback with him. He's going to have to get himself on at least one unit, which I think he could possibly do there. But with that push and pull back and what he is and all, I think if you're to take a second wide receiver in this draft and double dip at the position and do so within the first
first 4 rounds. And it took me a while to get him weaseled into this thing, so to speak. But to me, I think you could do worse than that.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I totally understand. Again, we're saying what we think the team would do, not necessarily what we would do if we were GM. But I think it's well reasoned and well rationed by you. I went Elijah Jones, the corner from Boston College. I'm kind of going out of left field on this one.
You had to go that way because you bypassed the position earlier in the draft.
Yeah, now I think he's an outside guy. He's not going to really fill that need in the slot, I don't think. But I kind of looked at this a little less on, don't get as caught up in the name because it's needle in a haystack on a name, but just kind of the structure of the draft. I think they go O-line, center early, tackle on day 2, receiver early day 2, off-ball linebacker mid-round, something like that, and maybe corner a little bit later, even though Dante Jackson is there. Kind of reminds me, and people will take this negatively, and I understand that. A little Justin Lane, he's a little, tall, a little high cut, but a guy that has, good ball skills. Tom Mead talked him up on our Tuesday roundtable, which thank you for listening. Really good feedback on the roundtable we did on Tuesday. He doesn't have great length, but overall he's got some size and can run. Tested really well at the combine. Pittsburgh loves their athletes at cornerback. He ran 4.44, 42.5 inch vertical, 10.11 in the broad, 5 picks in 9 games last year. They need some outside corner help and still some depth. And so I went Elijah Jones.
Who else? Who would have been your second slot choice for that spot?
Slot choice? Because again, Jones is an outside guy.
A corner choice.
I was debating on Jarvis Brownlee, who Tom talked about as well, who's kind of an outside slot guy. Yeah, but he didn't test well in Pittsburgh. They used to draft really poor athletes, kind of mediocre guys at corner. They've been shifting that really since Artie Burns. And you look at Porter and Trice last year, they were really athletic overall. So I couldn't get there on that. Look at Jalen Simpson from Auburn, kind of some similar issues overall. Actually, I had Luke McCaffrey on my others consider list too, so it's funny to see to kind of see where we align on that as well. So I just kind of a dart throw, really, but I think maybe they want some cornerback depth.
All right, I had considered as part of this process of putting all these together, Renardo Green in this slot. If they didn't, dress, kind of slot capable type of guys, Brownlee. I thought about Gabe Hall, someone out of defensive lineman out of Baylor, who we've talked a little bit about, and then I threw Hunter Norzad in there. Should had I bypassed the center position, one variation or something like that. Had they needed a center later in the draft or something like that. So I think our minds kind of our overall picture of position wise is kind of loosely matching up over here.
Yeah, I could really see Norzad as that fallback plan if they don't go center or they miss out on the top 3 for whatever reason. All right, I apologize. I'm a little bit of a time crunch here, so I want to kind of run through these last 2 picks here. In the 6th round, you go with the first 6th round pick at 178. Travis Glover, the offensive tackle / guard from Georgia State. I went Logan Lee, the defensive lineman from Iowa. For me, Lee coming in for a visit. He's got that Loudermilk body type a little bit, a high effort guy, moderate production, decently athletic, came in for a visit. I had to wait on D-line. I'd love to get it earlier than that, but I end on Logan Lee.
Look, once again, I'm embarrassed tackle had to wait this late, but it is what it is. I thought Brian Baldinger. Look, I think Brian Baldinger would probably agree that Glover might be one of the most underrated tackles in this year's draft class, especially for day 3 guys.
Is that what he said?
In so many words. I mean, he actually did a film breakdown on him of his game against LSU not too long ago on Twitter, one of his breakdowns. For Baldinger to address a guy like that, look, he's a small school. You had a great post about him several weeks ago, about why you have to at least consider this guy if you're Steelers later in a mocking process. Had Isaac Williams and Dan Colbert at his Georgia State Pro Day. A lot of the measures match up. He's got some position flexibility. The Steelers are not immune to drafting smaller school kids and ones that did not go to the combine. So if indeed they had to wait until day 3 for a tackle, which I know several people are gritting their teeth potentially hearing that, why not? a guy like Travis Glover. That's how I got to this point. And I got a lot out of your post on Glover several weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a ton of sense. I mean, that was somebody I was putting, I think, pretty repeatedly in my earlier mock drafts had I not gone to tackle. I just couldn't do a third offensive lineman, obviously, in this mock when I go with Barton in the first and Fisher in the third round. I mean, they showed a ton of interest in Glover, who's, FBS. He's not small school, FCS D2, but, he's group of 5, non-power 5. And for all the interest they've shown in him, attending his pro day, having Isaac Williams there, bringing him in for a pre-draft visit. It's a lot of homework to be done on a smaller school guy, size, length. I just wonder, can he play tackle in the NFL? Does he have the foot speed, the lateral agility and quickness? I just really struggle with that. I think he got by a bit on his size and length at that smaller school level. I think he's profiling as a guard, which he has played at the NFL level, but certainly Glover makes a lot of sense.
Definitely would be a developmental guy.
And then at 195, our final pick here in the draft in the 6th round, I just totally, because I got to pick some random guy. I think you have to do that in these mock drafts. You can't just pick all the obvious names. I looked at who's young and who's athletic and versatile. Last year, Corey Trice Jr., Spencer Anderson, 7th round picks. They're both 21, 22 years old, high RAS numbers, versatile. I went Mark Perry from TCU, who just turned 22, 9.59 RAS. He's versatile, played everything, box, slot, free safety, just everything at TCU in Colorado. And so that's why I went Mark Perry. You went Zion Logue from Georgia, getting your D lineman there at 195.
Yeah, look, if a player was drafted off physical measurements alone, the Steelers would be all over this kid in the 3rd or 4th round, wouldn't they?
Yeah, he looks the part for sure.
Unfortunately, what's the thing? Looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane sometimes. Mm-hmm. This guy does not play up to his measurables. This late of a dart throw is just that. This is a measurement match. A guy that went to the East-West Shrine Bowl, played 1,000 total defensive snaps at Georgia. Unlikely to be an every down player, was better against the run than he was a pass rusher. If you could get some more development out of him to start playing up to those measurements there, you might have a little bit of a rotational guy in there. But this was a Kevin Colbert body type pick.
Yeah, I mean it's the old school kind of classic size. What's his arm length? It's good. It checks the box. I forget whatever the number is, but it's kind of the prototypical look of a Steelers 5-tech 4-eye.
With Zion Logue, the arm length was 33 and a half.
Yeah, I mean that to me 33 is the number you're shooting for. 33 and a half. Take that for sure.
10-inch hands, 6'5", 5'8", 314 pounds, 33 and a half inch arms. 10-inch hands. Boy, if he played like those measurables.
Yeah, the production is just super light. I know that's partially because the issue with Georgia, though, is like some of those guys don't get great production because there's so much talent. Remember Trayvon Walker? What was his numbers when he came out? Number 1 overall pick. His numbers would tell you how is this guy the number 1 overall pick? Right. I mean, he had 6 sacks, 7.5 tackles for losses. Last season had 1 sack and 2 tackles for loss the year before, but the Georgia systems, these guys, the production kind of gets spread around. But yeah, I think there's some size to work with Zion Logue.
Look, he very well could go undrafted too, and if he does, would it be a surprise if Logue showed up in Pittsburgh as an undrafted free agent?
Not one bit.
All right.
So, and then Mark Perry, production also some concerns. No interceptions his last 2 years. Tackling inconsistent, but he's athletic. I watched some tape on him last night. Runs around, hair on fire kind of a approach. So just a dart throw, and then they still can get younger at safety and more athletic. Elliott is not a world beater at safety, and Casey's older, his last year of his contract. So some depth and special teams help.
All right, that's the mocks.
Let me ask you the age-old question we always ask each other this time of year. What's your one regret when you hit schedule or publish on the mock? You said, I wish I would have had that one back, a do-over.
Look, I'm very likely. I'm more likely to be wrong than right on Zach Frazier. That was a gut feel. The other regret, if you will, is not getting a tackle in one of those first 4 picks.
For me, it's receiver at 51. Maybe I should have gone with a more unknown, kind of less predictable selection with a Jalen Polk. I just think they want somebody with a bit more size. I recognize Pearsall may not even be there at 51. I just really struggle with trying to find that ideal receiver fit.
Yeah, I part of me wishes I would have put Pearsall in there, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, I get Wilson. I think they like Wilson. It's just, I don't know. He's a slot guy for a team that needs an outside receiver.
Sure. And look, obviously going to be pushback. Will Sainer still be there? At 84. So, I mean, look, I mean, we you try to put these things together best you can to try to, how you think the team will do it, how you think the draft will fall. You got to take some chances in there, thinking some might be taken too early, some might be taken too late, those kind of things there. There's always post-publish regrets in these things.
Sure.
And I have my share of them in this one.
Me as well. All right, Dave, any final thoughts here for the 2024 NFL draft? Maybe we can go through positional groups really, really briefly and just kind of get an overview of kind of our thoughts on some prospects and areas of note for the team.
All right, fire at will.
Quarterback, not going to be early. I think it could be late. Omar Khan leaving that door open. I'd watch out for Carter Bradley, South Alabama. Quarterbacks coach Tom Arth was down there. That could be a 6th-round selection. Undrafted free agent. If not, they're going to bring in somebody. Maybe I mentioned Rocky Lombardi from Northern Illinois, former Michigan Stater. I could see that. But late round UDFA.
I wonder maybe what if there's any real interest in Jordan Travis out of Florida State. That would be another name. What there's some sort of connection around. Yeah. I forget earlier in the offseason there. I'm not expecting it, but if you were to do something, it would be later day 3. It would be, one of those guys we just mentioned there, I think.
Running back, really can't expect a pick here. Some undrafted guys will come in, but they have the 3 running backs.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if they spend at this point. I hope they don't. I mean, Dylan Johnson's someone that we've talked a little bit about, I think. I mean, if you're to finagle and move up and down and acquire an extra 7th in this thing or something like that, maybe you throw it on him, but I'm not expecting a running back position to be drafted.
We'll see if they sign after draft a true fullback type or maybe something, equivalent. I know Ross has talked up Jaheim Bell, who's more H-back from Florida State, but we'll see if they do that or if they're going to stick with kind of Connor Hayward and Jack Coletto, who's a reserve future guy.
All
right, tight end. I mean, I think they'll bring some in because I just love all their tight ends, but I mean, they're pretty stacked at tight end right now.
It would be very surprising if they drafted a tight end. Very surprising.
Wide receiver, again, I think they want big physical yak type, trying to find that guy. I just had, again, there are guys out there, certainly, but trying to find the guy in the 2nd round they've shown interest in. I had more difficulty. I think it's ideally what they want. A double dip is possible. Who are some later round guys? We talked about the top round guys so much.
I looked at, I gave serious consideration to Cornelius Johnson, a 3rd Michigan man, in maybe the 6th round. Big guy, his sin is his 8 5/8 hands. He's a good contested catcher, can get open down the field, does have a high amount of drops though. But if you're down in the later rounds and needed a wide receiver, I don't think it's hard to connect. I did give serious thoughts if I did not put McCaffrey where I put him in my mock. I did watch some tape on Cornelius Johnson and did a deep dive on him.
Okay. Well, what's his best trait? You talk about some negatives, but what's the best thing he offers?
Contested catch. He was like 2nd in the nation or something in contested catches on minimum attempts of like 50 or more or something along those lines. I'll read you real quick here if I can find it. Where was it? I can't find it, but he was like 2nd in the nation in contested catches of 50 or more attempts or something like that. Some weird stat.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough on that. Late round guys, I would mention Taj Washington from USC came in for a visit. He's small and not super athletic, and that's going to hurt him, but he played on special teams, was a gunner. I think he's got, a couple hundred special team snaps the last 2 seasons. And so that's going to be attractive. And Jordan Whittington from Texas battled injuries early in his career. Zach Azani, receivers coach at that pro day a lot, probably for A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, but Whittington, a big slot type, not a vertical guy, but can make a short intermediate routes. I could see that potentially being a 6th round type of candidate.
What about as a 2nd wide receiver late in this draft, Bub Means out of Pitt?
Yeah, the height, weight, speed kind of guy, vertical outside. Yeah, I can certainly see that as well.
So there's a couple of names once you get past, because once again, we talked ad nauseum about 10 or 11 of these guys that you could shoehorn maybe in that second or third round pick there. So I think we've covered a good bit of those names throughout this process.
Yeah, I'd also just quickly mention Ty James from Mercer. Pittsburgh got that Mercer Pro Day. James began his career at Georgia and then transferred down, 20 touchdowns over the last 2 years, some size, some athleticism. All right, offensive line, offensive tackle. We've mentioned so many of these names. What else is there really to say at this point about the top end of the tackle class?
Yeah, we look. I mean, Rosengarten, where is he going to go? Yeah. Blake Fisher, we've had a lot of talks about. I just don't know enough about Christian Jones as maybe a mid-round guy. Walter Roos, a later Oklahoma product who would be a project, but. Yeah, look, if you get past the fourth round in this thing and you haven't addressed the tackle, it's hard to come up with names that you think could make a dent in the depth chart right away.
Yeah, Christian Jones, he's got a lot of experience. I think almost 50 starts at right tackle. Kind of a poor man's J.C. Latham, where it's physical, mauler, run blocker, questions about athleticism and kind of playing in space. But yeah, late round guys, I think you're all over Travis Glover 100% on that. If they do have a need there later on, not a need, but they didn't take a tackle early. And then how about the UK kid, Travis Clayton, coming in for a visit? Typically you probably think him, if you had a late 7, I could see Clayton more than that kind of 6th-round pick there. That's still probably a bit too early, but 6'7", 300 pounds, 35-inch arms, can move, came in for a visit. Watch out for Travis Clayton.
All right.
Andy Weidel in Philadelphia when they got Mailata. Could see that happening in Pittsburgh. Offensive guard, really not much here on the guards. I'd watch out for Stephen Jones, 6th round undrafted. I like this tape. He came in for a visit. I'm betting whenever Pat Meyer was out there with Oregon's Pro Day for Powers Johnson, Jones caught his attention. He's got, I think someone made a reader on Depot said Ramon Foster. I'm 100% behind that kind of comp. So watch out for Stephen Jones.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if a true guard wound up in this class.
And then at center, we know the top 3. Don't have to litigate those names again. If it's not one of those top 3 names, what do you think Pittsburgh looks towards?
Yeah, I think you look at Van Pran Granger, possibly. Norzad, really, bringing him in for a visit speaks volumes there. If you got much later in this thing, you were a big Matt Lee fan during the early process of this. It gets thin quick, though.
I think there's talent, but just trying to find that guy you'd love to play day one is harder to find. I think Norzad is their backup plan. You can talk about Van Pran Granger, talk about Lee, Bo Limmer from Arkansas, Nick Garugolo from South Carolina. He played tackle at Yale and moved up and was playing center last year. He's got some size in the middle. I think, but there are options, but I just hope Pittsburgh won't have to explore those options too heavily.
Yeah, it feels like the position will be addressed with one of the big 3, quite honestly.
Should mention Mason McCormick as well, coming in for a visit from South Dakota State, athletic, a little older, but 70 career games played. You don't find much more experience than 70 games.
All right.
D-line, should we talk about Braden Fisk more? He came in for a visit. I just have my own bias against that. I don't know, but you talk about some earlier D-line guys.
I have the measurable bias with him as well, too, the length.
Talk about
there's nothing not to like about him other than that, though, really.
Yeah.
If we're being honest, other than probably having to have somebody feed him.
Solve that and you're good. You're sold.
That guy's a machine.
Yeah, really productive after transferring from Western Michigan to Florida State last year. I know everyone's on Mason Smith, but man, he's gotten so much buzz. He even thinks he's going to go 20 through 45, which is probably more just fodder, not real. But I just feel like he's the default pick and he's going to go higher than people think. And there's so many teams competing for him right now.
We both love a row, but it feels like he'd be gone out of reach. But you could see him in black and gold.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think he certainly fits, and the name is just fantastic.
Gabe Hall is someone we've talked about. Who else on this list?
Again, it's hard. They're late round guys. Jaden Crumedy from Mississippi State. We talked about Logan Lee. He was in my mock draft. Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa, which I don't think is a great fit.
If they draft Logan Lee, you put him on weight gain 3,000, man, and go to the beach and put sand in his pants.
Yeah, he's got the frame to bulk up. He's 281, 6'5". He can grow. Loudermilk was 274 coming out,
Right.
which was a weird thing there.
And we never understood, was it him just getting ready for the combine? What was that?
Also just mentioned Leonard Taylor III from the U and Keith Randolph from Illinois as other potential later round type of guys. And I think Tom had just done the report on kid from Oklahoma, Jonah Lalou, something like that. Was an interesting guy with some measurables. Could see him as a UDFA.
All right.
Also, there's a kid from Colorado whose name escapes me that also could be a UDFA. He ran well at his pro day. All right. Inside linebacker, I think we mentioned the names Eichenberg, Gray, Wallace, Steel Chambers later. I think they come away with an inside linebacker in this draft.
Yeah. Does Wilson fall because of those injury concerns and all? And that guy can go sideline to sideline and run. Just how long? He's a little bit longer at 6'3" and 7'8", which normally just Steelers don't go that. They don't draft that tall of kids at the position, but I mean, there's a lot of great on his tape. Eichenberg, Gray, you got a bloodline guy in Trotter. How far will he fall? Ulo Focio out of Washington. He got in the late rounds, man. That's your guy right there. Senior Bowl guy, special teams guy. Probably not going to be a starter in the NFL, but could be a bit player. Watch out for Ulo Focio out of Washington. I think he has some respect on his name. Trice Knight was a guy I think marked all the boxes right in the study. Still Chambers, maybe a 7th round guy. Barrett, a Michigan product, late round guy. Maybe something to work with there. Man, we named Trevin Wallace. I mean, all those top 5 guys, or 6, 7 guys on Dane Brugger's list would fit. It's just obviously some are probably likely to be off the board. Junior Colson, Edgerrin Cooper, Trevin Wallace. I mean, there's a lot of guys that fit. It's just where would the Steelers take them at?
Yeah, again, I'm thinking 3rd, 4th round. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., if he were to fall for the bloodline,
right.
Just talk about that aspect. I don't know if his tape is great. He ran 4.82, but a name to mention. Nathaniel Watson from Mississippi State, 10 sacks last year, potential late round guy. But I think it's going to be one of those names that Curry saw on the pro day circuit.
I think the most interesting thing when it comes to a guy with Gray, specifically in our mock drafts where we have him, is when do the off the ball start coming off?
There'll be a run. It'll be a little bit, but there's going to be a run at the position. I just don't think it's a great positional group overall, but there's some names to target.
Right.
At corner, again, gone through a bunch of names. The slot names we've covered. I could really see Max Melton becoming a Steeler. I just couldn't find a place in my mock draft. I think he will go earlier than people think. They love the special teams aspect, the competitiveness, the ball skills. He's got more size than a Sanders still. I could really see that happening. Might be one of my draft regrets. Slot guys later in the draft, Daquan Hardy from Penn State, potentially.
DJ James is a guy just corner overall that needs some mention in here. The Steelers had a couple of personnel at that pro day. He matches up not so much in the weight, 175. There's a little bit of concern there that might cause him to fall a little bit. Brownlee, we talked about. Renardo Green fits, man. I mean, if you got in. Yeah. Renardo Green fits. You kind of wonder about Cam Hart and the injury concerns. If you get later into this thing, MJ Devonshire out of Pitt's, a guy you have to talk about. The other Penn State kid later, Daquan Hardy, maybe 6th, 7th round potential there. Probably undrafted guy, Beanie Bishop out of undersized guy out of West Virginia, worth mentioning there. I mean, once again, there's a lot of names. It's just most of these guys would probably be day 3 guys.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Besides the slot corners at the top, I'll mention one more name just quickly as well. Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. Pittsburgh likes kind of guys with really good 3-cone times and good change of direction. Lassiter, one of the top marks. There was questions over his 40 time at his pro day. Some had him as a 4.6 guy. Some had him as a 4.5 guy. That could determine his draft stock pretty significantly.
All right, Sean Stevens, bring him in as an undrafted, right? Out of Ferris State. Yeah, I think one of the top guys, maybe even a 6th-round pick, Joey Porter Jr.'s cousin. Don't believe he officially came in for a pre-draft visit, but I could certainly see. I mean, I think they specifically asked Stevens to go to that Michigan State pro day where he just crushed it. So, yeah, one of the top UDFAs to watch. An easy guy to probably sign. And obviously at the top of the board, Arnold, Mitchell, Cooper DeJean,
Yeah, could cornerback be a fallback plan if there's an O-line run? Potentially. We'll see.
All right. What else?
And then safety, not a great class overall. I think the guys will kind of go all over the place in terms of who gets drafted where. It won't be super conventional. How do teams view DeJean? I really don't know if there's any name that stuck out the best for me. I think Evan Williams from Oregon.
That was one that I looked at late that I have in my considered list is Evan Williams out of Oregon. Needs work on the tackling. He's not afraid to try to do it. Just not great at it, but can play in the box, can give you some help in center field, but he's better the closer to the line of scrimmage that he is. I think Bo Brady out of Maryland is another guy. If you got into the later rounds and he slipped, you mentioned Mark Perry. Didn't we have some sort of study where Ryan Watts checked some boxes or something?
Yeah, he was the only cornerback to check every single box. Now, some wonder if he's going to go to safety.
Right.
But I mean, and he wasn't productive, but super athletic with size. I know Josh Carney's been all over him. So yeah, that's a name to certainly mention.
I'm not expecting them to take a safety, but if they did, it would probably be day 3.
Yeah, I think that's fair overall. Let's see, anything else? Edge, yeah, probably unlikely to occur. If it does, it'll be pretty late in the process.
Well, I'd like to get that. He's going to get drafted though. That Mo Kamara. His tape is fun to watch. With him undersized, he's going to get pushed down because of not having that length. But man, he can get after the quarterback, man. He's probably a 5th or 6th round guy out of Colorado State. Dr. Mel was high on him, I think, at the Shrine Bowl, and I just was pulling some clips for it. I couldn't turn the damn tape off with him, but 6'1", 3/8, 248 pounds, lacks the length, but doesn't lack the effort.
Yeah, for sure. And very productive at Colorado State. Could have mentioned Javon Solomon from Troy. Jonathan Hightrader talked him up on the Tuesday show. Similar build profile. And Jonathan just talked about all the ways in which he wins. But again, edge, when you have Herbig, Moon is number 4, it's hard to see that happening with a draft pick.
Yeah, I don't expect them to address edge. I think they're good to go right now.
All right, Dave, wrapping things up here. Any final thoughts? We get maybe time for an email or two. I got a thing here in about 10 minutes I got to get to, though. So just kind of put a bow on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to I don't want to get deep into some emails here and burn off some time here. Just some final thoughts on this thing. It'd be interesting to see the quarterback run. How many? I think it happens every year. 6 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. I mean, great for the Steelers if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening, you're hoping for that to happen. Going to be interesting to see where Mims goes in this thing because of the length. There, you start drilling down into some of the length of these tackles versus the talk with is he a guard, is he a tackle with some of these other tackles. That makes for an interesting discussion there. The slot cornerback Sanderstill, where is he going to go? How far will he fall? How early will Phillips and Melton go? I think that's something to watch in this. I mean, as usual, Brian Thomas out of LSU, there's been so much talk about him going early, going late. Where does he weigh in at? Where does he end up going? How big of a run on wide receivers is there actually in this thing? Do the Bears trade out of 9? How many trades are in this? I mean, there's so many little storylines with this in this thing that is always the case.
Yeah, I think you covered it really, really well, Dave. I don't have too much more to add. Just how many offensive players go in this draft. It could be a record number. Defensively, it seems pretty light. Probably 1 in the top 10 in terms of defenders that'll go. I mean, 4 quarterbacks at least will go in the first round, probably a 5th, hopefully before 20. That'd be good for Pittsburgh. Do they make a move? Do they go up and make a small move to get a tackle, give a 4? Who knows? Could Graham Barton go higher? Where the center's going to go? Where's Frazier going to go? Where's Paris Johnson going to go? It's going to be a lot of fun.
Here's one other thing we'll end with here. True or false? The Steelers will trade somewhere up or down at some point during this draft.
I will say true. I don't know where and who and any details, but I will say true.
I will say true as well too. I think I think there might be 1, maybe 2 moves at some point. I don't think it happens in the first round. It could, but I don't think the picks where they sit right now will be where the picks are all together. I expect a move up or move down at some point during this draft.
Amen to that. So, Dave, want to thank you for all these great conversations, this fantastic draft talk. Want to thank our Depot team. Well over 300 scouting reports for Thursday. I will have a full draft packet with all our information, everything you look for, one-stop shop. Got our big board up right now that Scott Pavel does. Fantastic job on that. Everyone loves reading that encyclopedia of knowledge. But yeah, just can't thank our team enough. Can't thank you enough, Dave. Can't thank you guys, the listeners, for listening to us and giving your feedback and indulging us in our big rants and rabbit holes. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, I enjoy the process. I enjoy our contributors. Look, we can't watch tape on 300 players, so we have to rely on some of these a lot of these scouting reports that go up to learn a little bit about a lot of players there, and we wouldn't be able to do it without staff. All the people that go to the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, Combine, a lot of great info there. We're just blessed to have such a great crew, blessed to have great listenership, great questions throughout this thing, making us really think and talk about things. Alex, as always, great job by you. I look forward to every time you and I get on, whatever we talk about, I look forward to it. So tell the people what we're going to do after each, or at least each day after the draft. Quick mini podcast, right?
Yeah, we'll have a quick podcast reacting to each day's worth of picks. I'll have videos. We'll have recaps and film rooms and certainly all the analysis you could wish for.
Yeah, go to SteelersDepot.com and hopefully we'll have it for whatever you're looking for there. So until right after the first pick is made, will be the next time we're on this show. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast at gmail.com. If you like what we do, donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. Once again, thank you to our listenership and readers and everything. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.